Vicky speaking. How can I help you? Hello, sir.
Hello.
How
Okay,
many
what's
adults
going
on
on? What's
board?
up? There are 0 adults on board.
There's nobody on board the boat?
No.
All right.
Nobody here is over the age of 21.
Sir, that was not the question. Is there a person? Is there a person, a living individual on the boat?
There is something happening beneath this call, something the dispatcher does not appear to notice. A young man is reporting a boat in trouble near the west tip of Horn Island. The bilge pump has failed. Water is rising. The people around him sound frantic. Then, buried behind the main conversation, a woman's voice appears to ask a question that has now exploded across the internet. Is Nolan dead? At least that is what thousands of people believe they hear. And that question should not fit the story we have been given. Because Nolan Wells was supposedly alive on Horn Island when this boat pulled away, his friends say he chose to remain behind. The caller tells the dispatcher that the people aboard are safe. The entire emergency is presented as a mechanical problem, a sinking boat, nothing more. So who is the woman in the background? Why would she mention Nolan? Was she aboard the boat? Was she speaking through another phone? Was she even saying his name? And why do other listeners believe someone can be heard talking about Nolan's chest? That is only the first problem. The GPS record shows the boat leaving Horn Island at 4:31 in the afternoon. But it did not simply make one clean trip back and disappear into a driveway. It entered Fort Bayou. It returned to the original dock. Then it moved again. Nearly 3 hours passed between the departure from Horn Island and the boat finally being removed from the water. And during those same hours, Nolan's location remains one of the biggest unanswered questions in this entire case. Then come the private communications, call logs, messages, a 5-minute conversation, and an alleged leaked exchange now being used to challenge what the public was previously told about who contacted Nolan's mother and when. But there is a trap here, because one screenshot can appear to prove a lie while actually answering a completely different question. One muffled voice can sound unmistakable after someone places the words on the screen. And one unexplained boat movement can look sinister until the mechanical details are added. That is why these pieces have to be examined together. The call, the route, Warren Hudson's new account, Nolan's phone, the woman he was reportedly last seen with, and the communication that may either expose a major contradiction or reveal how quickly this case has been distorted by partial information. Stay with us, because the most unsettling part may not be the sentence people think they hear. It may be the part of the official recording that nobody has to enhance. The moment urgent assistance is requested, then suddenly appears to be no longer needed. Let's get into it.
I feel like it was just a big. I talked to Nolan, and Nolan was drinking. Everybody was drinking, most of everybody, and I mean, Nolan seemed completely fine every time I talked to him. We had just regular conversations.
Most people following Nolan's case have heard the short dispatch excerpt. Someone aboard the boat calls for help. The bilge pump has failed. Water is rising. The dispatcher asks whether everyone aboard is safe. The caller says yes. But the longer CTO recording reveals far more. Confusion, pressure, young people speaking over one another while the caller struggles to answer questions, and people behind him appear to work on the boat. The call was made to CTO, a private marine assistance company, not 911. The caller says they are near the west tip of Horn Island and that the boat is sinking. He wants someone to come. When asked how many adults are aboard, he says none, because nobody is over 21. The dispatcher has to clarify that she is asking how many living people are physically on the vessel. Eventually, he estimates around 7. It sounds less like deliberate evasion than a frightened young caller misunderstanding formal questions. But it confirms something important. Several people were close enough for their voices to enter the recording. The dispatcher asks whether everyone aboard is in good health. The caller says yes. That wording matters. She asks about the people on the boat. She does not ask whether Nolan is safe. And according to the friend's later account, Nolan was no longer aboard. They say he remained on Horn Island. So the caller's answer does not establish Nolan's condition. It only describes the people he says were around him. Then comes the faint background voice, now driving a new wave of suspicion. The words are muffled and overlap with other noise. But thousands of listeners believe a woman asks, "Is Nolan dead?" Some hear the name clearly. Others hear something entirely different. Another interpretation claims someone says to check Nolan's chest, though that phrase is even harder to isolate. This is how viral audio becomes dangerous. A caption supplies the words. The brain searches the noise. Then the sentence becomes difficult to unhear. But that does not automatically make the interpretation false. It means the original recording must be separated from the words placed over it. The call is authentic. The background voices are real. What has not been publicly verified is the exact sentence. No identified forensic audio expert has authenticated it. Law enforcement has not announced that a woman asked whether Nolan was dead. Still, the timing makes the phrase impossible to ignore. The boat was preparing to leave Horn Island. Nolan was supposedly remaining behind alive, so why would anyone near the caller ask whether he was dead? The voice may be saying something else. The name may not be Nolan. Someone may have been repeating a rumor. The words may have come through another phone. Or the viral interpretation may be accurate. The recording alone cannot decide. The speaker's identity could. Who was near the caller? How many women were aboard? Was anyone using another phone? And does the original file contain clearer audio than the compressed copies spreading online? Those questions require the source recording, voice comparison, device records, and passenger interviews, not captions, not louder edits. But before the disputed voice is resolved, the call contains another contradiction that requires no enhancement. The caller says the boat is sinking. The dispatcher offers the Coast Guard. He declines. That does not prove wrongdoing. He may have believed sea tow was enough. The vessel may already have been stabilizing. Or the young caller may not have understood the danger. The recording suggests the group was struggling to communicate clearly. The dispatcher repeatedly asks for the coordinates. The caller struggles with the boat description. Someone in the background appears to give instructions about pulling a plug while the vessel is moving. That detail may support Warren Hudson's later claim that they were trying to drain water and correct the boat's mechanical problem. It may explain why the emergency changed. Then the dispatcher contacts the local sea tow captain, and the situation becomes stranger. The dispatcher tells the captain that frightened young people near Horn Island are reporting a sinking boat. They want it pumped out and towed home, but the captain says he has just spoken with the boat owner's grandfather. According to him, the grandfather said they no longer needed assistance and would call if anything changed. Think about that sequence. The young caller says they are sinking. He asks someone to come. Yet during the same period, the grandfather apparently tells sea tow that help is unnecessary. That may have a simple explanation. The group may have found the source of the water. They may have stabilized the vessel. Another boat may have offered help. Or the grandfather may have received updated information. But the public still does not know what changed. Who contacted the grandfather? What was he told? Did he know Nolan was no longer with the group? And why did the frightened caller seem unaware that help had already been declined? Two communication lines, two different understandings of the same emergency. That pattern repeats throughout this case. Warren says someone later told him Nolan was seen around 6. The friends say they believed Nolan had another ride. Nolan's mother says she learned he was missing during a late-night call. Again and again, major decisions depend on what one person says another person told them. That is how a simple timeline becomes unstable. The caller is eventually transferred to the captain. What happened next has not been fully presented in the public excerpts. But the boat left Horn Island at 4:31. And unlike the disputed voices, the GPS gives us fixed times and documented movement.
Well, we actually have obtained new movement records, GPS data. Our Jared Eggleston and Skylar Henry down in Mississippi obtained this from a Mississippi entity, and it actually shows exactly where the boat left.
The boat left the mainland shortly before 10 in the morning. It reached Horn Island at approximately 11:14. Nolan was publicly reported as last seen around 3. The boat departed at 4:31. That supports part of the friends' account. They said the vessel developed trouble and had to leave. The CETO call confirms a real mechanical emergency was reported, but the GPS route did not end when the boat reached the mainland. At approximately 5:52, it entered Fort Bayou. At approximately 6:06, it returned to the original dock. Later, it moved again. At approximately 7:19, it reached the Fort Bayou launch and was removed from the water before being transported to the owner's residence. Why Fort Bayou? And why return to the dock before moving toward a different launch? There may be an ordinary explanation. The damaged boat may have required a safer ramp. A trailer may have needed to be moved. The vessel may have needed draining, equipment, or testing. But possibilities are not facts. The GPS proves movement. It does not explain the reason. It also does not identify everyone aboard. Online theories have turned the route into evidence of cleaning, tampering, or moving Nolan. The GPS establishes none of that. It tracks the boat, not Nolan. But the route still matters because Nolan's location during those hours remains publicly unconfirmed. At 4:31, the boat leaves without him. At 5:52, it is in Fort Bayou. At 6:06, it is back at the dock. At 7:19, it is removed from the water. Warren later explained the vessel's changing speed. He said the motor would not remain properly trimmed, the passengers shifted their weight, and someone entered the water to pull a drain plug so accumulated water could escape. That may explain why the boat moved slowly before accelerating. The background instruction about the plug appears to support part of that account, but explaining the speed does not explain the entire route. Why did the boat enter Fort Bayou? Why was it moved after reaching the dock? Who remained with it? Was it operating under its own power? Did investigators inspect the pump, plug, and motor? Did CETO ever reach it? The boat connects Nolan's trip to the hours after he disappeared. It carried him to Horn Island. It carried his belongings back, and it returned without him. The GPS is not proof of a cover-up. It is not meaningless either. It is a documented route, still awaiting a complete public explanation. And Warren's interview adds another complication. He says his final personal sighting of Nolan occurred well before the boat reached Fort Bayou. Then he introduces a possible sighting that could move the timeline forward by several hours. Warren Hudson has now given the most detailed public account from inside Nolan's group. He spoke to commentator Brandon Tatum and answered questions about why they left Nolan, what happened to his phone, and who contacted his mother. His answers are direct. They are also the account of someone personally involved. According to Warren, Nolan was not abandoned without warning. He says Nolan was in the water with a young woman often identified publicly as Katie. Warren describes Nolan holding her while both remained above water. As the boat prepared to leave, someone allegedly called for Nolan to return. Nolan declined. He was staying. That is the foundation of the friends' account. They believed Nolan chose to remain and would find another ride among the large holiday crowd. Nolan's parents reject that explanation. His father says Nolan had been taught to return with the people he traveled with. His mother questions why he would willingly stay without his phone, keys, or a confirmed ride. The conflict cannot be settled by competing descriptions of Nolan's personality. The critical question is whether anyone can independently verify what he said before the boat left. Did another boat operator agree to take him home? Did the young woman hear Nolan say he was staying? Did he arrange a ride? Or did the group assume he would manage? Choosing to remain is one thing. Being left because others expected him to find a way home is another. Warren says Nolan appeared fine when he last saw him around 3. No visible emergency, no fight. The boat left at 4:31. That leaves roughly an hour and a half between Warren's personal sighting and the recorded departure. Did anyone speak to Nolan during that gap? Was he still with the young woman? Did he know the boat was leaving? The sentence, Nolan chose to stay with a girl, compresses a long period into one simple explanation. But plans can change. Rides can leave. Someone can place a phone aboard a boat and later expect to retrieve it. That is why the final direct interaction matters. Warren then says somebody told him Nolan was seen around 6. If verified, That would place Nolan alive on Horn Island approximately an hour and a half after the boat departed. It could shift the relevant timeline away from the group's exit and toward people who remained later. But the alleged witness has not been publicly identified and independently confirmed. Right now, it is second-hand information. Who saw Nolan? Where? Was he alone? Was he still with the woman? Was the time supported by a photo, message, or phone record? Without those details, the 6 o'clock sighting remains a claim. If it is confirmed, the GPS detour and Nolan's final hours become two separate stories. The boat would be moving around the mainland while Nolan was supposedly still alive on Horn Island. If it cannot be confirmed, Warren's last personal sighting remains around 3. The uncertainty becomes much wider. Warren was also asked directly whether he killed Nolan. He said no. Whether he had anything to do with Nolan's death? Absolutely not. Whether he deleted anything from Nolan's phone? No. Those denials have persuaded some viewers. Others question the interview because Warren chose a commentator seen as sympathetic to the group. Warren said that was precisely why he trusted Tatum. He believed the coverage had been fair. Choosing a sympathetic interviewer does not prove dishonesty, but it does not independently confirm the answers either. Warren's account provides specific claims that can be tested. Nolan chose to remain. His phone was left voluntarily. The devices were stored together. Nobody knew his password. The phone was surrendered immediately, and someone allegedly saw Nolan around 6. Precision creates a path to confirmation, or contradiction, and nowhere is that more important than with Nolan's phone. Nolan did not return with the boat. His phone did, his keys did, his car remained at the house where the group gathered before the trip. That combination immediately troubled Nolan's family. A teenager supposedly chooses to remain on an island, but without his phone, without his keys, and without a publicly confirmed ride. Warren says the phone was never taken from Nolan. He says several people left their devices aboard the boat to protect them while swimming. That is plausible. Salt water ruins phones. Boats become temporary storage. According to Warren, Nolan's device was collected with the others and later placed in the boat owner's truck. He says nobody knew Nolan's password. Nobody accessed the phone. Nobody deleted messages. And when the device was requested that night, it was handed over immediately. Nolan's mother saw something different. While searching for him, she used location tracking applications and found his phone on the mainland. After recovering it, she believed messages or activity were missing. That creates the central digital question. If nobody accessed Nolan's phone, why did content appear to be gone? There may be explanations that do not involve deliberate deletion. Some applications erase messages automatically. Some conversations disappear after viewing. Cloud data may not appear locally. Accounts can be accessed from another device. And early reports may have described one missing conversation as though the entire phone had been wiped. But intentional deletion remains something digital forensics can test. When was the phone last unlocked? Which applications were opened? Were messages deleted? Were accounts accessed elsewhere? Did the phone connect to another device? What locations did it record after Nolan separated from it? The phone could answer questions, interviews cannot, but only if the data was preserved and examined correctly. Public accusations have moved faster than that process. Some people say the phone was wiped. Others say it was thrown away. Neither claim matches the confirmed public record. The phone was recovered. The dispute concerns its handling and contents. Warren's denial is clear. The family's concern is clear. The space between them requires forensic evidence. Not body language, not online theories. The keys matter too. Nolan's father reportedly recovered them from the location connected to the boat and the house, where Nolan's car remained parked. That suggests Nolan expected to return after the island trip, but it does not show whether he handed over the keys, stored them with his belongings, or simply left them behind. The troubling image remains. Nolan went to the island. His property came back. He did not. The explanation may be as ordinary as protecting valuables while swimming, or it may show Nolan never knowingly agreed to remain behind without them. That is why the collection timeline matters. When was the phone gathered? Who handled it first? When was it moved to the truck? And did investigators retrieve records from every device connected to the group? The FBI is assisting with digital evidence, according to the sheriff. That involvement has been exaggerated online. It does not mean federal agents have declared Nolan's death a homicide. Horn Island is federal land, and the FBI has resources for digital analysis. The agency has also addressed interstate threats against people connected to the case. That is separate from announcing a federal murder investigation. The digital evidence deserves intense scrutiny. Private individuals do not deserve harassment. And before Nolan's mother recovered the phone, another event had already occurred. A call around 11 that night. New screenshots connected to that call have opened an entirely different controversy. One early belief was that Nolan's friends returned without him and said nothing. They came home. Nolan did not. Hours passed. The verified timeline is more complicated. Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, has acknowledged that Warren called shortly after 11 on July 4th. The Coast Guard also confirmed that a friend contacted the agency around the same time. Warren's account adds detail. He says the first call did not connect. He tried again. They spoke for approximately 5 minutes. Then he contacted the Coast Guard. Screenshots shown during the interview appear to support that sequence. An attempted call around 11:07. A second call lasting roughly 5 minutes. Then contact with the Coast Guard. Screenshots are not carrier records. They can be edited or misunderstood. But these align with facts already acknowledged by Christine and the Coast Guard. The broad sequence appears credible. Warren contacted Nolan's mother, then a friend contacted the Coast Guard. The larger question is what happened before 11. The boat left Horn Island at 4:31. It was removed from the water at approximately 7:19. Warren says the group initially believed Nolan was still socializing or had left with others. Horn Island was crowded. People moved between boats. Phones were not always nearby. At some point, that assumption changed. When? Did the young woman say Nolan was no longer with her? Did an expected ride arrive without him? Did someone begin checking houses or calling friends? Was anyone searching before 11? More than 6 hours separate the boat's departure from the call to Christine. That does not automatically prove indifference. A crowded holiday gathering can create confusion. But those hours still require explanation. If Nolan chose to stay, who confirmed his ride? What information made the group believe he was safe? And once concern began, why did the Coast Guard call reportedly not require assistance? Without the full conversation, we do not know. What is clear is that the claim no friend contacted Christine that night is inaccurate. One did, around 11. That corrects part of the public narrative. It does not resolve the timeline. The question is no longer whether they called. They did. The stronger question is why the alarm began so late. Then comes the leaked communication, and this is where context becomes crucial.
All right. And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's
How
on
many?
board.
All right. Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
What?
Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
No, we do not need that.
All right. All right. Do you have your current GPS coordinates?
Let me go look.
The circulating communication is being presented as proof that Christine contradicted herself. The argument goes like this. Christine allegedly said the boys or their families did not reach out. Warren's call log shows that he contacted her. Therefore, some commentators say she lied. But that conclusion may combine two different periods. There is a major difference between no one contacted me the night Nolan disappeared and no one contacted me after attorneys became involved. The first would conflict with the acknowledged 11 o'clock call. The second could still be true. Context decides everything. What was Christine asked? Was she discussing July 4th? The following days? The boys themselves? Their parents? Their attorneys? Or continued communication after the legal process began? A short clip can erase those distinctions. The same applies to an alleged leaked text. One message proves contact on one date. It does not establish ongoing communication. It does not prove Christine remembered every exchange correctly during an overwhelming period, and it does not prove deliberate deception. But the message may still matter. It could show when concern began. It could reveal what the family was told about Nolan's location. It could show when the group began believing he was with a particular person. The danger is using a text as a verdict rather than evidence. The wording must be authenticated. The sender and recipient confirmed. The date visible. The surrounding messages preserved. And the original interview question played in full. Without that context, viewers may be judging a contradiction created by editing. Christine's statements are not beyond scrutiny. Neither are Warren's. The family has challenged the friends. The friends are now challenging parts of the family's account. Every major claim should be tested, but grief is not proof. Friendship is not proof. A confident interview is not proof. And a screenshot without context is not proof. The strongest conclusion is narrower. Warren's call to Christine appears supported by multiple sources. The public should not continue saying the friends remained completely silent that night. But the leaked communication does not prove Christine deliberately lied about later contact. Both can be true. And this leads to another assumption spreading online, that the woman in the audio must be the same woman Nolan was reportedly last seen with. There is no verified evidence of that. The viral recording contains a female-sounding voice. Nolan was reportedly last seen with a young woman. That makes the connection tempting. The unknown voice must be Katie, but nothing publicly verified establishes that. The voice may have belonged to someone aboard the boat, someone standing near the caller, someone speaking through another phone, or someone discussing something unrelated. Even if the voice said Nolan's name, that would not identify the speaker. The young woman Warren says Nolan remained with presence a different set of questions. Did she stay with Nolan until the boat left? Did she see him after 4:31? Did she arrange a ride? Did she leave with another group? Was she connected to the alleged 6 o'clock sighting? Did Nolan tell her he planned to return to his original boat? Ben Crump previously highlighted a conflict. The friends said Nolan chose to stay with a girl. The woman was reportedly said to have indicated that Nolan intended to return to the boat. If accurately described, those accounts do not present the same final plan, but timing could explain the difference. Nolan may have planned to return earlier and changed his mind. Or the friends may have assumed he was staying without hearing him clearly agree. The exact sequence matters. Commentators connected to Warren's interview said they had messages attributed to Katie, but chose not to display them before obtaining her context. That restraint is important. Private messages can be misunderstood. Shock, fear, and legal advice can shape how someone communicates after a death. But those messages could still answer crucial questions. When did she last see Nolan? Was he swimming? Was he impaired? Did he say who would take him home? Did he enter another boat? Did she hear an argument? Did she tell the original group he was safe? The public does not need every private detail. Investigators need a complete timeline. That account should then be compared with objective evidence. Photos, videos, location data, messages, boat, GPS, phone records, independent witnesses. Until then, the woman in the Ceto audio and the woman last seen with Nolan must remain separate. Combining them creates a dramatic theory. It may also create a false one, and Horn Island itself complicates everything. Because Nolan was not standing on an empty beach with 7 people, the island was crowded. Aerial imagery changes how July 4th on Horn Island should be understood. This was not an isolated gathering. Boats lined the shore. Groups arrived and left throughout the day. People swam, socialized, and moved between vessels. That fact cuts both ways. It makes the friend's assumption more plausible. If Nolan stayed behind, he was not necessarily alone. He may have been surrounded by acquaintances, strangers, and possible rides. But the crowd also makes the lack of a verified final sighting harder to understand. Who saw Nolan after 3? After 4:31? Near 6? Who watched the original boat leave? Who saw the woman Warren described? Who recorded the shoreline? Holiday gatherings generate photos and videos. Investigators have requested footage related to a reported altercation, showing how important civilian recordings may be. An earlier viral argument video also demonstrates the danger of assumption. Ben Crump initially said a person heard demanding a phone appeared to be Nolan. Tristan Shepard later said the voice was his. That correction matters. A clip that appeared to show Nolan fighting over his phone may have captured someone else. The same caution applies to the Ceto audio. People hear a name, then build a theory around it. But the lesson is not to ignore the recording. It is to identify the speaker. The island's size also matters. Horn Island stretches for miles. Someone can leave a crowded area and quickly move beyond view. Currents around barrier islands can be dangerous. That supports the possibility of an accident. Nolan was reportedly a strong swimmer and athlete, but strong swimmers can still drown. Current, fatigue, alcohol, injury, or panic can overwhelm ability. Swimming skill does not eliminate drowning, but dangerous water does not prove drowning occurred either. The independent autopsy did not reach that conclusion. The state findings and toxicology information had not been publicly released in the reporting examined for the script. That leaves the physical evidence unresolved. The condition in which Nolan was found has also been misrepresented. Early reports suggested he was fully clothed. The United Cajun Navy later clarified that he was wearing blue swim trunks. That removes one apparent mystery. It does not explain how he died. Nolan's body was found along Horn Island on July 6th. Decomposition complicated the examination, and by the time the independent pathologist examined him, structures needed for certain conclusions were unavailable following the first autopsy. That brings the story back to the medical evidence, and to the question the viral voice appears to ask: was Nolan already dead? The independent autopsy commissioned by Nolan's family did not determine how he died. The cause of death was listed as undetermined pending further investigation. The manner of death was also undetermined. That is not a murder ruling. It is not an accidental drowning ruling. It means the pathologist did not have enough information to make a reliable determination. The examination found no fractures. No identified deep tissue injuries were reported. A red area of discoloration was observed at the back of Nolan's skull. The finding was considered inconclusive and deserving of further investigation. It may represent injury, it may relate to decomposition, it may have another explanation. The independent pathologist did not claim that the discoloration proved Nolan had been struck. That distinction is important because the mark has been transformed online into a confirmed head wound. It is not currently confirmed as the cause of death. Decomposition limited the examination. So did the earlier state autopsy. Internal structures and organs had already been removed or retained during that process. That included material important for evaluating possible drowning and potential injury involving the neck. The removal of organs during an autopsy is not automatically suspicious. Pathologists routinely remove, examine, and sometimes retain organs or tissue. The concern in Nolan's case is not simply that organs were removed. It is that the independent pathologist could not personally examine everything needed to reach certain conclusions. That reduced the value of the second examination. It did not prove evidence was intentionally hidden. The state autopsy and toxicology findings are therefore crucial. Did the lungs contain findings consistent with drowning? Was there evidence of another medical event? Were intoxicants present? Could Nolan have become disoriented? Were there microscopic injuries? Was water found where it would be expected? Was the skull discoloration examined before decomposition advanced further? Until those findings are fully reconciled, neither side should claim the autopsy has settled the case. The family is correct that the independent examination did not confirm accidental drowning. Authorities are also correct that the independent examination did not establish homicide. The medical result is uncertainty, and uncertainty increases the importance of the timeline. If the audio truly contains someone asking whether Nolan is dead around 4 in the afternoon, that would be enormously significant. It could challenge the later account that he remained alive on the island. But for that conclusion to hold, investigators would need to establish several facts. The sentence must be verified. The speaker must be identified. The time must be fixed. The location of the speaker must be established. The meaning of the sentence must be understood. And Nolan's location at that same moment must be determined. Without those steps, the audio cannot override the rest of the evidence. The alleged 6 o'clock sighting points in the opposite direction. If Nolan was reliably seen alive around 6, then a 4 o'clock question about whether he was dead would likely have another explanation. That is why the 6 o'clock witness could be decisive. The two claims cannot simply be stacked together as though both strengthen the same theory. One suggests knowledge of death before the boat left. The other suggests Nolan remained alive long afterward. They conflict. Only verification can resolve them. The same is true of the GPS. The detour looks suspicious when presented without the mechanical emergency. The mechanical emergency looks complete until the later route is examined. The leaked call logs look like proof of deception until the difference between early contact and later communication is recognized. Every piece in this case appears to answer one question, then opens another. At the end of all this noise, several facts remain solid. Nolan traveled to Horn Island on July 4th with friends. The boat left its mainland dock shortly before 10 in the morning. It arrived at Horn Island at approximately 11:14. Nolan was publicly reported as last seen at around 3 in the afternoon. A person connected to the boat called sea tow at around 4 and reported that the bilge pump had failed. The caller described the vessel as sinking. He said there were approximately 7 people aboard. When asked about the health of the people aboard, he said they were safe. He declined Coast Guard involvement during that call. The boat left Horn Island at approximately 4:31. Nolan did not leave on it. The vessel entered Fort Bayou at approximately 5:52. It returned to the original dock at approximately 6:06. It later moved to the Fort Bayou launch and was removed from the water at approximately 7:19. Nolan's phone and keys reached the mainland. Nolan did not. Warren called Nolan's mother at approximately 11:07 that night. A friend also contacted the Coast Guard around 11. Nolan was reported missing. His body was found along Horn Island on July 6th. The preliminary independent autopsy could not determine the cause or manner of death. The official state findings and toxicology results remained central outstanding evidence in the latest detailed reporting examined here. Investigators have interviewed numerous witnesses. The sheriff has said the friends were cooperating. The FBI is assisting with digital evidence and addressing threats connected to the case. That assistance does not, by itself, mean the FBI has declared Nolan's death a homicide. The investigation remains open. The completed evidence is expected to be reviewed by prosecutors and could be presented to a grand jury. Those are the established points. Now, the disputed ones. No public forensic. Analysis has confirmed that the background voice says, "Is Nolan dead?" No verified public evidence identifies the woman speaking. No confirmed evidence connects that voice to Katie. No publicly authenticated account establishes that Nolan was definitely seen alive around 6. No released forensic report proves that members of the friend group deleted messages from Nolan's phone. The GPS route does not prove evidence was destroyed or moved. The call log screenshots do not prove Christine deliberately lied. The independent autopsy does not prove homicide, and the absence of severe trauma does not prove accidental drowning. That may feel less satisfying than choosing a side. But it is where the evidence currently stands. The viral phrase could become a major breakthrough, or it could be another misheard line. The 6 o'clock sighting could rebuild the entire timeline, or it could disappear under scrutiny. The Fort Bayou route could have a routine explanation involving a damaged boat and the need for a launch, or it could reveal details investigators have not yet made public. The phone may show no tampering by the friends, or forensic records may identify activity that demands an explanation. The leaked communication may expose an inaccurate public statement, or the full context may show that 2 different time periods were being discussed. What matters now is not which possibility receives the most views. It is which one survives verification. The original CETO file should be examined by qualified forensic audio specialists. Not only an enhanced social media copy, the cleanest available source. The analysts should determine whether speech can be reliably recovered. If words are identifiable, every speaker should be compared against known recordings with proper legal authority and methodology. Every person near the caller should be identified. Investigators should establish who was aboard during the call and whether anyone was communicating through another device. The grandfather's conversation with the sea tow captain should be reconstructed. Who told him help was no longer required? What exact condition was the boat in? What changed? The mechanical failure should be documented. The bilge pump, the drain plug, the motor, the trim system, the amount of water, any repair or inspection performed afterward. The full GPS route should be paired with testimony from the people operating and transporting the boat, not just dots on a map. Who was aboard during each movement? Why did the vessel enter Fort Bayou? Why did it return to the dock? Why was it moved again? Which route was powered and which was towed? What happened between 6:06 and 7:19? The alleged 6 o'clock witness must be identified and tested. A real sighting should have details: location, clothing, companions, direction of movement, time source, reason for certainty. If the sighting survives that examination, it could become one of the most important facts in the case. If it does not, it should stop being repeated as though it were confirmed. The woman reportedly last seen with Nolan deserves the same evidence-based treatment. Her complete account should be obtained privately and professionally, not through harassment, not through internet threats. She may hold information about Nolan's final known intentions. Did he plan to leave? Did he have another ride? Was he impaired? Did he enter the water again? Did he separate from her? When? The phone should be reconstructed from every available source: device logs, cloud backups, carrier data, application records, location history, connected devices, authentication attempts, deleted message metadata. The aim should not be to prove the family or the friends correct. The aim should be to establish what the phone did after Nolan separated from it. The late-night communication also needs a full chronology. Not only Warren's screenshots, carrier-supported records where legally available, calls between the friend group, calls to Nolan, calls to his mother, calls to the Coast Guard, messages discussing his location. The moment concern became alarm. The exact alleged leaked text should be authenticated and presented with surrounding context. The complete question asked of Christine should be included before anyone claims her answer was false. The state and independent autopsy findings must be compared by qualified professionals. The missing structures should be accounted for. The toxicology should be completed and interpreted carefully. The skull discoloration should be evaluated alongside photographs and findings from the first examination. Only then can the medical evidence be given its proper weight. And ultimately, the full record should be placed before the appropriate prosecutors and grand jury. Not the viral version, not the family's version alone, not the friend's version alone, the complete version. The sea tow call begins with urgency. A young man says the boat is sinking. People move in the background. Questions are misunderstood. Someone appears to be trying to solve the mechanical problem. A woman's faint voice enters the recording. The internet hears, "Is Nolan dead?" Then the group declines the Coast Guard. The towing captain says the grandfather has already reported that assistance is no longer needed. The boat leaves Horn Island. It enters Fort Bayou. It returns to the dock. It moves again. Hours later, Warren calls Nolan's mother. Then the search begins. Every one of those moments can potentially have an innocent explanation, but an explanation must still be complete. The friend's new account answers some questions. The sea tow call confirms there was a real boat emergency. The background instruction about the plug may support the mechanical explanation. The GPS confirms the boat left when they said it did. The late-night call records challenge the claim that the group never contacted Nolan's mother. Those facts matter. They should not be ignored because they weaken a popular theory. But other questions remain. The GPS route after leaving Horn Island has not been completely explained in the public record. The alleged 6 o'clock sighting has not been independently established. The phone dispute remains unresolved by released forensic findings. The identity and words of the background woman remain unknown. The conflicting descriptions of Nolan's final plan remain unsettled, and the independent autopsy could not determine how he died. Those facts matter too. They should not be ignored because they weaken the accident theory. This case does not need another person deciding the ending first and forcing every detail to fit. It needs a timeline strong enough to survive both sides. If the background voice is saying something entirely different, say so after proper analysis. If the Fort Bayou route was only the practical movement of a damaged boat, document it completely. If Nolan was seen alive at 6, identify the witness and confirm it. If nobody accessed his phone, let the digital evidence establish that. If Christine's statement was taken out of context, play the full exchange. And if any piece of evidence reveals that someone knew more than they admitted, follow it wherever it leads. No shortcuts, no protected narrative, just the record. Because the most frightening possibility is not only that a woman may have asked whether Nolan was dead, it is that the answer could already be sitting somewhere inside the evidence, in the clean version of the call, in the GPS logs, in a phone backup, in an unpublished message, in the memory of someone who watched the boat leave, or with the person who last saw Nolan alive. Please subscribe to this channel. There will be more developments, more corrections, and more evidence to examine as this investigation moves forward. And in a case this crowded with claims, subscribing helps you return for the full record instead of one isolated headline. Before we close, a necessary reminder. Some interpretations discussed here, including the disputed words in the background audio, the identity of the woman, the alleged 6 o'clock sighting, and the meaning of leaked communications, have not been independently established as fact. No person discussed in this video should be treated as guilty without evidence and due process. Do not contact, threaten, or harass private individuals connected to this case. Send genuine evidence to investigators, not accusations. The viral voice may eventually become the most important sound in the Nolan Wells investigation, or it may turn out to be distorted conversation that had nothing to do with his death. But the documented boat route is not an illusion. Nolan's phone returning without him is not an illusion. The gaps in his final hours are not an illusion. And an undetermined autopsy is not closure. Until the audio is professionally analyzed, the route is fully explained, the phone data is reconstructed, and Nolan's last verified movements are established, the central question remains exactly where it began.
I had a great relationship with Nolan. I've never got in an argument with Nolan. We were super close, and I've never said or will ever have anything bad to say about Nolan Wells. I mean, Nolan seemed completely fine every time I talked to him. We had just regular conversations, and Nolan was making me laugh. I had a couple conversations with Nolan and Javon, Nolan and my buddy James, Nolan, and I could tell you, I talked to Nolan a couple times, but it wasn't like I was strictly sitting there talking to Nolan the whole day. I mean, there was hundreds of people I knew out there. So,
what happened to Nolan Wells? And who, if anyone, already knows the answer?